Okay, just a minute.
So in the fall, we had a rollout of,
yes.
of the satanic agenda.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
So I started seeing satanic symbols on and off UC Berkeley, the UC Berkeley campus. And for instance, I saw the head of the goat, which
Baphomet.
Yeah, Baphomet.
The goat of Mendes.
In students' windows, I started seeing stars turned upside down, so that the two points of the stars represented the goat's horns, and I saw American flags turned upside down and backwards on the balconies of the students' apartments. That was representing overthrow of the U.S. government. Laurence and I have recorded the ski team, UC Berkeley ski team, in the house next door to us during parties. They were drinking and dancing and everything, and they were talking in loud voices about overthrowing the U.S. government.
No, this is anecdotal, though.
We have tape recordings.
Well, you've recorded it, but you're interpreting it. So, do you have any sort of because I've been reading in the corporate press about the growing popularity of religions such as Wicca. So they're just portraying it as a form of religious expression rather than a satanic takeover. I think, I agree with you. There's something deeper here.
There's much more. Okay.
Yes, but I want to, for the sake of the skeptics out there, beyond the anecdotal, and I know you've recorded and you've photographed these signs. I've seen them as well. YouTube is full of, there's a satanic ritual taking place at the Super Bowl, at the American Music Awards. The internet's full of that type of display. So we know something's going on. I wanted to find out definitively, is there some sort of Department of Defense or something like equivalent to the National Security Memorandum 200 that was workshopped, a white paper that says we are going to convert the universities and colleges in the United States to Satanism?
It doesn't come out directly like that, but it's happening not just in California, just on the UC campuses. It's happening across the United States. It's happening in Europe. For instance, in the UC campuses now, in the land grant university campuses around the U.S., there's very heavy recruiting with very young entering students, female students, to become prostitutes. And there is a lot of student prostitution now, which is encouraged by these sort of underground networks, and they're coming from the campus. But in Europe, they have referred to this coming out of the military. And we know that when the U.S. Destroyed Yugoslavia, DynCorp went in, and the first thing they did was to begin recruiting young women who were starving to death and living in horrible conditions to be prostitutes. And I saw those beautiful Yugoslavian girls in Tokyo, in Roppongi, which is the nightclub area of Tokyo. And they were obviously on drugs. They were standing in doorways in pairs, and they were looking for customers. This is happening at the University of Michigan. They have a satanic group active on and off the university campus.
Well, at Harvard University, some student organization that claimed to be satanic or Luciferian was going to hold a black mass on campus.
That's right.
They did call it off.
That's right.
But I think they were testing the waters to see how far they could take this agenda.
Well, off the campus is a satanic group, a formal group in where the University of Michigan is. Is that Lansing? I'm not sure what city it is.
University of Michigan.
But
East Lansing is Michigan State. Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So they, in the mainstream media, they reported an official satanic group, organized group, was going down to Louisiana to do a satanic ritual for the city council.
Right.
And and it was like there was a big question about whether the city council wanted them to do it or not, but it ended up happening, and now there's a new chapter of that satanic group in Louisiana, in that city. I think it was New Orleans. So this is coming out of the military.
Okay.
It's part of the occult.
All right. So does this perhaps trace back to Colonel Michael Aquino?
Oh,
Are you familiar with that individual?
absolutely. It traces back to the Jesuits. It traces back to Mesopotamia, to the Kabbalah and the Talmud, which were magic cult instruction books. And they recommended pedophilia in children, but they had to be under 8 years old. And it's in the Kabbalah and the Talmud. And properly practicing Jews, I'm not including them, they follow the Torah. The Talmud and the Kabbalah are satanic.
The Babylonian Talmud. Is that
Yes,
what it is?
yes.
Okay.
Those are satanic cults.
And are those satanic cults controlled, or were they created by these ancient Iranian bloodlines?
Yes, they were. They
Please
were.
expand.
For instance, the Aldobrandini is one of the ancient Iranian bloodlines. It's a famous Italian family. And Al-Dob, Al is the, Dob is devil, Dini. Al-Dob,
The people of the devil.
Yeah, the people of the devil.
Wow.
So they're definitely satanic. They're proud of it. They're open about it. We have a website, lorenmarais.info, and we have a Rothschild ball with photographs of the Rothschilds and their guests and members of their family doing satanic practices.
This is the mask ball photos?
The mask ball.
And by the way, they're called Venetian masks, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we can see the cultural and the historical continuities, ladies and gentlemen.
And the Venetians were Iranians.
Well, yeah, you alluded to that. That's why I interjected that, because I'm interested in masking.
But the Middle East, these Mesopotamians, all of Eurasia, we know now from DNA studies done over the last 5 years, especially by Russia, all of Eurasia was settled by Central Asians.
Please talk a little bit about the DNA studies, and I assume that these studies are coming out of the Human Genome Project, right?
No, they wouldn't be coming out of the Human Genome Project, which is American. They're coming out of Russian scientific research.
All right. Because this DNA, from our conversations, this DNA research provides the scientific backing that helps support this hypothesis or this theory in the making. It's irrefutable. It's ironclad, and I think this is probably the most important development in this type of research. It's hard science. It's not fantasy. It's supported by definitive DNA analysis, and you can trace the distribution of these different peoples, these different tribal groups, and how their culture and their religious practices migrated across the world, and how they have been transmitted to us down here to 2016 are embodied in people like Linda P.B. Katehi.
Right.
Please.
And so these ancient Iranian tribes moved into Europe and the Middle East. So the Basques are ancient Iranian bloodlines.
Is there a DNA?
Yes, from the DNA.
Okay.
Yes. The Berbers in North Africa, in the Altai Mountains, the Basques, the Berbers, and the Kurds all came from the Hittites.
And there's DNA research on
Yes,
that?
this is from DNA research, and also language similarities.
All right.
And
so it's a multidisciplinary effort.
And blood
types. The thing is, these disciplines are all compartmentalized.
They're compartmentalized.
You're achieving a grand synthesis of all this.
Yes, synthesized it.
Okay.
I've distilled the information into a picture that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's all internally consistent as well.
All right.
So you take multi-factors, you start putting them together and relating them. And then you find more things. They introduce new things that you wouldn't have thought of. How could I ever think in a million years I knew that arborio rice had to be from Iran? And but how would I ever imagine that investigating Katehi's origins would bring me to the source of arborio rice in Iran?
Or the Familia Castro.
Yeah, or the Familia Castro.
The Farnese.
Yeah.
Right.
And
all
so
the different linkages.
So, for instance, with Castro, this is a different kind of a DNA study, but it's physical characteristics and how powerful they are. I said, okay, Alejandro Farnese, or Pope Paul III, worked for a Borgia, and who was the Pope. And when that Borgia died, Lucretia Borgia was his daughter, the infamous Lucretia Borgia. And so when that Pope died, he made Alessandro Farnese a cardinal at 24, and then he made him Pope as his successor. And so I took photographs of paintings of Alessandro Farnese when he was young, and then when he was Pope, and then when he was a very old man as a Pope, in his 80s or something. And then I took paintings of his sons and their coats of arms. The coats of arms are always on the paintings. And then I collected Pope Paul III's grandsons, photos of them. They were cardinals. And then I found a painting of Fidel Castro in black, like a Spanish hat or a monk's hat, and a black robe with just a tiny white collar, peeking through. And I said, "What's this?" Well, it's his portrait, which will have his coat of arms added to it after he dies. And then that will be put in some palace in Italy.
Okay.
In Piacenza, one of their palaces in Piacenza. And then I said, okay, well, what happened in the Hellenic period is that the Farneses, one of them was one of the generals, one of the 8 generals who guarded Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great appointed him to be the governor. He was the governor of ancient Egypt. And when Alexander the Great died, he made himself a pharaoh. And Alexander the Great had given his sister to this general to marry. So they became the pharaoh and the pharaoh's wife. And after that, almost all the Farneses have a middle name or first name of Alexander, Alejandro, or Alessandro. So Castro's name is Fidel Alejandro Castro. And then you can trace them even before that back into Mesopotamia.
So we've got the genealogy, as you
Yes.
did with P.B. Katehi.
Yes.
We've got the DNA, and you were talking about the physiological resemblance.
The physiological.
Please break that down for us.
So when I got all these pictures together, and I had a photograph of Fidel Castro when he was a teenager or something with no facial hair. And so I got a painting of Philip I of Spain, the first Habsburg king of Spain. And he had a certain kind of lips. They were very thick, and they were sort of had vertical lines in them or folds. And that is a mutation. It's a genetic mutation. It's actually a defect. And I compared it to Fidel Castro's lips. He has Habsburg lips. It's indistinguishable. I mean, it's absolutely a bloodline. And then I did this to John Kerry. John Kerry's family were Jews in the Habsburg Empire in Czechoslovakia. And they were Huff and Judah, house Jews. So they were very, very high in the court, and they advised the kings. Teresa Heinz Carey is from a Portuguese Hohenjuda family, and her family advised the Portuguese court. And then I found a painting of John Carey's ancestor on his mother's side. She was a Forbes,
Right.
not Malcolm Forbes.
Of the opium family Forbes.
The opium family.
The Yale
Yes.
Forbes.
And I found the first sea captain, Forbes sea captain, in 1823. This painting was painted. And it's in his house, which is now a museum in Boston. Those are the Boston Brahmins. They were the drug dealing captains. And I just couldn't believe it. Oh my God. That ancestor, Captain Forbes, who had 3 of the fastest clipper ships when he was 24, John Carey looks exactly like him. So these are ancient bloodlines that they keep. They know how to breed, who to breed into the line, and how to keep the physical characteristics. How could someone 150 years later, 175 years later, how could John Carey look exactly like him? That's like 10 generations or 8 generations. And then I realized they have very, very strict breeding programs. And for instance, with the royal families, the popes had to always give permission for 2 members of a royal family to marry. For instance, especially if they were on the throne. And there could be no relatives or family association for 7 generations, in order to marry. And when the Roman empires collapsed, the Western Empire collapsed first, the Eastern Empire collapsed in the 1500s, late 1400s. These ruling families wanted to reassemble the Habsburg Empire. Remember, the Roman Empire became the Habsburg Empire, and they wanted to recreate that Roman Empire, and they did it by intermarrying very closely related people, but they had to all have land that were pieces of part of the Holy Roman Empire. And so there was so much inbreeding in the Habsburgs. The Jesuits did it, actually, and they did it. One particular Habsburg prince, who was to be the emperor, Holy Roman Empire, had so much inbreeding that recently Germany did DNA studies on the whole Habsburg bloodlines, and they said he had the DNA of someone who had been the product of sex between a sister and a brother.
That's Egyptian, isn't it?
That's Egyptian.
That's a dynastic pairing.
Yes.
So what you're saying also, before we leave this point or move on past it, is that certain physical traits are also passed on.
Yes,
that
they are.
They're telltale
Yes.
physical traits because of this breeding program, including
Yes.
mouth structure,
Yes.
in the case of Fidel, at the
Yes.
brow, the bridge, the nose
Yes.
structure.
Yes, intelligence, beauty. There are many, many characteristics that they're breeding for, but it can also be a way to wage war. So instead of waging all these wars to reunite the Habsburg Empire, the war was in bed. So they did it through inbreeding.
And then they can reintegrate the empire.
Well, after about
consolidate it.
After about 200 years, a bloodline will just die out because they're infertile from so much inbreeding. And so they would just take a cadet family, one of the other branches, and they plug them in. And so it was the same bloodline, but if you look at the Habsburgs, they all have strawberry blonde hair. It's reddish blonde. And there's a Pope, Orsini, who had reddish blonde hair, and I think he was involved in the the Habsburg line.
Okay. Well, that helps explain how, by examining portraiture and today photography,
Yes.
and perhaps some forensic scientists
Yes.
can break it down as well, measure eye
Yes.
distances and eye color,
Yes.
and of course DNA. We're going to be plugging in some of the missing
Yes.
pieces of this puzzle
Yes.
here to further support this hypothesis of this ancient bloodline that's at the head of our
Yes.
world civilization.
Yes, and so
and mean us harm. They want to,
Yes.
from what
Yes.
I'm gathering, they want to exterminate most of the
Yes.
human population, regardless of race.
they do. They've had their own breeding program, especially through the universities.
Mm-hmm.
I had 53 marriage proposals at Davis and in the UC system, and I was going crazy. It was frightening me to death. I thought they were crazy. I didn't know why they were asking me to marry them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were Kuhn Loeb, the Loeb Kuhn Loeb banking
Yes.
family.
Mm-hmm.
They were there was another one, a couple more. Anyway, they were all banking. Goldman Sachs. There was a Sachs introduced to me in the geology department at Davis in Berkeley, and he said, "You're really a catch," and I didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now I understand. These are breeding programs.
And you were targeted
Yes.
as a broodmare.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how Diana
Yes.
Spencer described
Yes.
herself.
She was a broodmare.
She was a broodmare.
Yes.
She helped regenerate the
And she was a
decadent
broodmare.
line of.
She was a broodmare because her biological father was Sir Jimmy Goldsmith.
Sure.
And the Goldsmiths and the Rothschilds came from Frankfurt, Germany in the mid-1700s to establish banking in London, to take over
Sure.
that banking center.
Mm-hmm.
And they intermarried. They are Iranians. They are not Jews. They're Iranians. And so that put the Iranian bloodline into the royal family of England.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find out. You see, Kate Middleton's mother's maiden name was Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a hidden history, too.
Sure.
And
there's a book, a fairly decent biography. It's called Billionaire, and it's about Sir James Goldsmith.
yes,
And it will tell you about his marriages, his affairs,
yes,
his dalliances.
yes.
This might be slightly off topic, though, but it seems like bastardy is really important to understanding this.
Yes.
They breed outside of these family
Oh,
authorized
yes.
lines. But
Yes.
how do these bastards, in this strict term,
Yes.
how do they figure into this ruling system?
Well, one of them is, one of those bastards is Hitler. He was a
Rothschild.
Rothschild.
Sure. I thought
Another,
that was just an apocryphal.
No.
It's,
another
okay.
one is Bill Clinton's mother, who was the illegitimate child of Winthrop Rockefeller, who was governor of Arkansas.
Arkansas.
That's why Clinton was president, and now Hillary Clinton. She's actually, her middle name was Rodham. I looked it up, and it was shortened from Brodonsky, and she's from a Jewish family in Brodonsky, Poland. And
Wasn't that her stepfather? Or her
No,
biological father?
Rodonsky was her natural father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because she also had a stepfather who was Jewish. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's
Okay.
she's Eastern European.
So they were bred.
They were bred.
They were.
That
set
was
up.
a breeding.
Okay.
Yes, that was a breeding program.
And just out of curiosity, because this is in the news lately, there's some talk that Chelsea Clinton was the offspring of Webster Hubbell and Hillary Clinton. Who was Webster Hubbell? I know.
I don't know.
I know he was an advisor to the Clinton family,
Oh.
but she's a dead ringer for Webster Hubbell.
Oh, well then.
She's not the child of Bill Clinton. In other
Nobody
words.
cares in those families. They just breed who they're told to breed to.
So why was Bill Clinton sterile, or he was unable to breed?
They didn't.
with,
they didn't
with,
want that bloodline. They wanted the other one.
They wanted the Rodinsky one, bloodline.
No, they wanted the Hubble.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out.
I don't know
You
who he is.
Okay,
So.
that's on the agenda for
Yeah.
research. And we're deputizing people
Yeah.
who are watching this. We are deputizing you as researchers because, as you're finding out, it's not coming out of academia. Most of the exciting research and the insights aren't bound by these.
Another one is
areas.
the royal family of Monaco. And
Grace Kelly.
yes, Prince Rainier was actually the son of a Algerian, no, a Moroccan housemaid,
I didn't know that.
and the Prince of Monaco. And he was sterile, so his wife had a baby with no one exactly knows who. But you know how beautiful they are, Princess Caroline and Princess Stephanie, and how gorgeous, very handsome Prince Rainier was. That's because his mother was half Moroccan. She was Berber. This is the ancient Iranian bloodline bred back into her. Another one is...
Where does the Kelly line come in? She's Irish American and Catholic.
She was more than that. She was
that's
blonde and blue eyes, so
Right.
she's Iranian.
She's Iranian. Because that's what you're referring to, alluding to it as a mutation.
Yes, yes.
The blue-eyed blonde
Yes.
is a mutation.
Yes.
So this is, again, how
Yes.
you can
Yes.
trace this bloodline
Yes.
through physiological...
Right.
Yeah, she's
Yes.
world-class beauty.
Yes, very beautiful.
Down to today, which
Yes.
we're still
Yes.
admiring her movies with,
Yes.
Cary Grant. And
Right. But you see, she's Irish, and the Irish were Iranian.
please expand on that,
The
because that's so counterintuitive.
Well, these Iranians with mutations felt more comfortable, the blonde and the redheads. You know, they don't have the right pigment. They
Very
live normal.
fair-skinned.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they felt more comfortable in colder climates or at higher altitudes. So they migrated up into Scandinavia and to the British Isles. And there are a lot of ginger men in Ireland. Well, that's Iranian blood. And it has to be, remember, it's a recessive gene. So it has to be from the male and the female.
Is there a DNA study on this recessive gene and tracing Irish people, quote unquote, to Iranians?
Oh, yes. There's, yes.
I just wanted
Yes.
to double check.
Yes.
Just so
And
that
that's
the
in the-
viewers understand that
Yes.
this is not just being pulled out of the hat here.
And that's,
This is science we're
Yes.
talking about.
this is science-based. It's solid, and I really trust these recent Russian DNA studies. They did them very carefully, and they did them for a very specific purpose.
I wanted to ask about that. Politically, why are the
For
Russians doing this? Please.
For instance, there's all of this uproar in the Ukraine now because the Ukrainians are saying we speak Ukrainian, and the Russians, the pro-Russian people, are speaking Russian, and they're Russian Orthodox, but we're Ukrainians, we speak Ukrainian. Well, it's the Bolsheviks who made up a pidgin language and called it Ukrainian to set up a dynamic that divided the Ukrainian. They made a Hegelian dialectic artificially. They're all the same people. They came from Scandinavia into Kiev. They're called the Rus.
Which is red.
Rus, yes, red. And we watched the Ukrainian war for 2 years, and there would be all these soldiers. Some were blonde, the Ukrainians, and a lot of them had dark hair. And then all of a sudden, a little video clip would come on from the battlefield for that day, and there would be a soldier standing there with ginger red flaming hair, and you go, oh my God, where did he come from? And there were Viking colonies all over the Ukraine on the rivers for thousands of years, and in Turkey. There are redheads all over Turkey also.
Sure. All the way down through Rome, right?
Yes.
The Varangian Guard.
Yes.
Okay.
And so all of these were ancient Iranians with that mutation who went into Scandinavia to a more comfortable, a colder climate. And then they came down through the Mediterranean on their ships and colonized the Mediterranean and Ukraine and Turkey and the Crimea.
So this marriage between Grace Kelly, Irish Catholic, Irish American, and Prince Rainier of Monaco was really a homecoming.
Iranian bloodline.
It's a genetic homecoming.
Yes. It It was
Right.
Iranian bloodline.
And you had the power of the entire world focused on this. This was the biggest wedding until Princess Diana married Charles. This was
That's
like
right.
a world historical
That's right.
event. It was a fairy tale princess bride
Yes.
type of scenario.
Yes.
All right. So you
Now-
had all that energy focused on the consummation of these lines that were
Right.
coming back
And
together
they-
and fusing.
They keep rebreeding the ancient stock,
Mhm.
the chi in Italian, like
Mhm.
let's see, like
Medici.
Medici. Yeah, chi means the stock, the bloodline you're from, or the
Mhm.
tribe.
Mhm.
It means DNA is what it means,
Right.
and it's always through the female. It's not through the male. It's
Mhm.
through the female, and they also breed their animals through the female. That's the most important breeding in the breeding pair. The female is the most important, and it's because the DNA and the RNA in the mitochondria is separate from the DNA and RNA in the nucleus of the cell. And it's the mitochondria that provide all the energy for the body and body functions. So in the organs that use the most energy, the highest percentage of mitochondria are in those cells, and it's the brain cells and the heart cells. So when radiation passes through a cell, it can miss the nucleus, but it can't miss the mitochondria.
Mhm.
And so when it damages the DNA in the mitochondria and the RNA, then you have all of these brain diseases and heart diseases, which have escalated. They've gone up exponentially since the nuclear age started with the dropping of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let's take a brief break so that we can refresh ourselves, and then we'll restart for part 2. Thank you, Lorraine. This has been a great conversation.